If you're someone who spends some time or a lot of time watching YouTube videos like this one on English speaking and improving your English speech, but you're not quite where you want to be when it comes to speaking. You understand a lot of the vocabulary, like the way I'm speaking right now, but you don't have the confidence to speak the way you would in your first language, in your native language. A big reason for this is because of something that fluent speakers do without even thinking. This is something that we do naturally, and it's something that's known in the English teaching world as connected speech. Now, connected speech is essentially the way that fluent speakers talk. Connected speech is the blending of different words together. A perfect example is the words or the phrase going to. Now, if you see these words, you would think, yeah, that looks like going to. However, most of the time in an actual conversation, you're going to hear people say gonna. Not going to, but gonna. We were going to go to lunch. They were going to go see a movie, but they went to have dinner first. Going to, gonna. In this lesson, we're going to talk about some of the main forms of connected speech that you would hear in an actual conversation. So when you're watching movies, or when you're listening to music, or when you're watching a podcast or online content, the way that fluent speakers say a lot of words and phrases is quite different from what you'll hear on most or a lot of teaching content, English teaching content. So gonna is a great example of this. There are a few more that are very common. Should have. I should have done this first. The way that a fluent speaker would pronounce this is shoulda. I should have done that first. I should have done this first. We should have filled the car with gas before we went out on the road. Should have, shoulda. A very similar one is could have. Could have. We could have done something else. We could have taken a plane, but we decided to take the train instead. We could have taken the plane, but we decided to take the train instead. Could have, coulda. Should and could are very common modal verbs. A modal verb is used to indicate the necessity or the possibility of something else, another verb. Modal verbs like should, could, would, shall, must. These are often really good examples of connected speech. Should have, shoulda, could have, coulda, would have, woulda. We would have come over, but we were doing something else. Woulda, would have. Modal verbs are one excellent example of connected speech if you wanted to narrow it down to a few words in the way they're pronounced. However, it goes far beyond modal verbs. Most of the conversations that you're going to hear fluent speakers have in movies, in TV shows, at work, in your everyday life, are going to have a lot of connected speech. This is something that you'll really want to focus on and expose yourself to as much as possible. This is really important in becoming a true fluent C2 level speaker, is getting used to hearing the way that fluent speakers combine words like this. We can take another perfect example. A very common question would be, did you eat yet? However, That's going to be pronounced ji yet. Ji yet? That's very different than did you eat yet? Obviously, this is a huge challenge. This is really difficult to do and to understand. The key is to expose yourself to as much fast, fluent conversations in English speaking that you can. Ji yet? Yeah, we already ate. We stopped at a restaurant on the way here. If you find this challenging, you should. It's difficult. This is very difficult to get a grasp of because there's so many different variations depending on how fast somebody talks naturally and the vast number of combinations of different words. Now, if you really want to master English, if you really want to become a fluent C2 speaker, you have to get out of your comfort zone. This means you have to do things beyond what you are comfortable doing. You should not only make mistakes, you should celebrate mistakes. Mistakes are made when you are doing something beyond what you are used to. They are proof that you are learning, that you're trying something new. We actually recently launched a new project on our website. It's called the B2C Nation. This is for people who are at a B level, B1 or B2 level of English, and they've kind of hit the B1 or the B2 plateau. This is very common in learning a language where you have a base of understanding. You understand a lot of words and can understand a lot of the English that you hear, but you can't quite get to that advanced level. Now, the B2C Nation is a place where we expect you to make mistakes. We celebrate when you make mistakes for the reasons I just mentioned. It's a place where it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, if you're young or old, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. The only thing that matters is that learning English, getting to a fluent level, a C1 or a C2 level, is very important to you. So if you want to learn more, use the link in the description. We would love to see you there and help you get beyond that intermediate plateau. A few more connected speech examples. If we were to look at the sentence, at the end of the day, at the end of the day, that sounds kind of clunky and unnatural. At the end of the day. A key here is the words of and the. They're pronounced other. At the end of the day. At the end of the day. At the end of the day is a common English expression. It's said in a variety of circumstances. Usually we would say it if we're telling a long story with a lot of different steps. And at the end of all of that, we'll say, at the end of the day, and then a quick summary of what we were just saying. So if I was talking about a business trip, you could say, well, we took a lot of time to get there. We had to drive to the airport, and then we took a plane to the convention center. We were there all day, and we met a lot of people, and we had some great conversations. And at the end of the day, it was really productive. You go through a few different things that you're saying, and then at the end of the day, a quick summary of the point of what you're saying at the end of the day. Another really common question that you'll hear, this is so common, I can't even count the number of times I've heard this. It's, do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Now, if you were to say that in a normal conversation, as a fluent speaker, do you know what I mean? That's not a fluent way of saying it. A fluent speaker would say, do you know what I mean? 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 It's a question. It's asking for another person's opinion or thoughts. You know what I mean? Yeah, he's a nice guy, but sometimes I feel like he's judging us when he's talking. Do you know what I mean? An example could be if you're at work and you're talking about your boss, you could say, yeah, I think he really wants what's best for the team, but sometimes he comes across kind of rude. Do you know what I mean? This is not just asking if the person understands what you're saying. You're trying to elicit a response. You're trying to get a response on whether they agree. As a Canadian, we have a sound that we make, A. A is something that we say after a lot of different things. It's a very common and well-known sound or word. This is one of the meanings of that word, A. As a Canadian, one of the things that it means is, do you know what I mean? For example, that was a long speech, eh? That means that was a long speech. Don't you think? Don't you think? Don't ya think? Don't you think? Connected speech. It's everywhere. It's really important to get a hold of. It's really common. It's difficult. It takes a lot of practice and a lot of focus. This is one of the parts of learning English that highlights a strategy in learning a language. And it's to give your full focus and your full energy for a shorter period of time. So instead of doing 2 hours of practice, 2 hours of listening practice, or 2 hours of speaking practice, do a shorter burst of really focused and intentful learning. Really put all of your energy and all of your focus into what you're doing. This is going to be more effective in the long run than spending a lot of time, for example, with something in English playing in the background. Well, it's good to do that. Well, it's good to expose yourself to as much English as possible. Really focus on what you're listening to and how you would say that yourself. So you can shadow myself, or you can shadow English content. That's simply listening to what you hear and saying it back. But really listen to what you're hearing and really try to mirror or shadow what's being said. This is really important with connected speech. And this is going to help you sound the way you want to sound, to express yourself closer to the way that you're able to in your first language. I want to thank you for watching this far into this video. If you found this helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you'd like to see our future content. We make English learning videos and English content. Really glad you were able to join us for this video. And until next time, keep learning and we will talk soon.